I think we got it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Plaid Avengers channel here on the Twitch International Network. I don't know if that's the thing, but it sounds good, doesn't it? If I could, as always, I'll get a shout out from anybody that happens to be hanging out in the chat room to let me know if this is both coming through loud and clear. Otherwise, I'll just sit here and talk to myself. All right. Chasin ACC is up in the hizzle. Loud and clear. I'm Wilbur's in the house. Chasin ACC is, yes. Plaid Katie is there saying hello. Plaid Katie's always there. Thank you. All right. Who else we got? Arlie Bees up in the Airy Bees saying hello. Hello to you, Airy Bees. Hello to anybody. First time chatter from Kayla Brody. Welcome, Kayla, and thanks for chatting for your first time. We got a first-time chatter from CD Thor. I'll just say Thorinson. First-time chatter from J Rout. And also Esther Riviera is up in the hizzle. Dummy Summy. Oh, I love that screen name. Dummy Summy up in the hizzle. Vikram Tawari. Hey, Vikram, did you get the email I sent you? I sent you an email to your old VT address, as well as on Facebook, about the... I need you to email me at, of course, joboyer@vt.edu. All of the stock picks you had for me last week. We were talking about investing in defense industries. Everybody should invest in defense industries because new Cold War is back on, and there's going to be tanks and planes and trains and bombs, and everything's going to be starting to get made. All them companies are going to be making money, so you might as well buy their stocks so you can make some money on the side. Mexican Goose up in the hizzle saying good evening. First time chatter. Love the first timers. From Nihals Zero saying hey. Hoon Park, that's Harold up in the house. R Cover C in the hizzle with the Velociraptor. First time chatter. Smashly. Smashly 5. That's a good name. Smashly. Lee, is it L-E-I? That's like Lee, no, it's Lay. A lay that you have in Hawaii that's also L-E-Y. Hanky Bear is up in the hizzle. Welcome back, Hanky Bear. Spakowski is back in the hizzle. Vikram Tawari says, oh, sure, it would be my pleasure. Would create a document for you. Please do, Vikram. I appreciate your investment tips and advice. If you have any others outside of the defense industries, I'll take those too. However, let's get to business, shall we? Tonight's theme is election rejection of liberal democracy. This is a global theme, my friends. It has been moving forward in haste for the last 5, nay, 10 years solid. One could say 20 if one wanted to. And in brief, so I won't bore all of my friends on Facebook that already heard me talk about this for 10 minutes already. However, for those of you in my class, or who've ever taken my class, or who are just smart people who know how the planet works, what we've seen around planet Earth, all of my lifetime, and mostly all of your parents' lifetimes, is a movement towards liberal democracy. And when you hear me say liberal democracy, don't think of liberals in America. Liberal democracy is what you call democracy on planet Earth, with an emphasis on human rights, liberty, the rule of law. That's liberal democracy on a planetary scale. And the world had been moving towards liberal democracy for some time. What time? Since World War II, really. Ever since the liberal democracies like the United States, the UK, France, and the rest of Europe teamed up to beat back the right-wing, not-so-liberal democracy, fascist states of Italy and Germany, Nazi Germany at the time. Once the liberal democracies won World War II, with the assistance of, again, not-so-liberal, the Soviet Union, most of Europe then was converted back or embraced liberal democracy, and it became a theme for the rest of the world. In 1947, when British India was released from Britain, it became Pakistan, actually West Pakistan, East Pakistan, and India, all three of which, to greater or lesser extent, embraced democracy. Many countries in Africa in the 1970s, 80s, and even into the 90s became completely free and independent. Many of them, at least tangentially, embrace democracy. Most of Latin America has spent a lot of time under military dictatorships and old colonial powers. Most of them embrace democracy. Even places in Southeast Asia that had long flirted with kingdoms and monarchy, like in Thailand, and military dictatorships like Burma, over the last 80 years, more and more became democracies. So this has been the theme since World War II. And the biggest one, or the latest biggest kind of conversion to liberal democracy, is when Great Soviet Union, which was communist slash an autocracy slash a dictatorship, depending on who you ask and who was in charge at the time, when it imploded in 1991. From its ashes, 14 sovereign states were born, many of which, here it comes, embrace liberal democracy, including Russia itself. That has been the theme. However, in the last 5 to 10 years, and again, one could argue since the turn of the century, the 21st century, this movement has stalled, and what we're 100% seeing in the last 5 to 10 years is a movement back towards the political right, back towards authoritarianism, back towards autocracy. Autocracy is just kind of a nicer way, a bigger word that encompasses many of the specific systems like, say, fascism or dictatorship or military dictatorship or monarchy or religious states. I mean, it's all autocratic, small groups of people that hold all the power. And even if they hold elections, that's all window dressing. Even if they pretend they have a free press, it's window dressing. So what we're seeing in country after country now is a movement back in that right-wing column direction. And that's what I wanted to talk about tonight, because a whole bunch of stuff has happened in the last 48 hours, which is calling into question how much longer liberal democracy is going to reign as the most desired system on planet Earth. Specifically, if you've been following any news at all, Pakistan seems to be completely up in the air right this second of whether they're going to continue to even pretend to be a democracy. And Pakistan, for most of its history since 1947, has only on again, off again, kind of been a democracy. But once again, it's off again. It looks like they're going to give up on it because of their current Prime Minister, Imran Khan, who basically said, nope, I have all the power. I'm going to stay in power and do whatever I want. You also have Russia under Vladimir Putin that for 20 years has been a slow motion move back into autocracy, now a full-fledged one-party state. At best, some would call it a dictatorship. China back on its feet. It never really embraced democracy anyway, but China is now a global power that really loves autocracy and wants to perhaps promote it. At least it wants to promote it at the expense of devaluing democracy for Team West's side of the planet. But what happened in the last 48 hours is Pakistan, I'll get into the details in a minute, has decided we're not sure if we want to be a democracy anymore, and our leader certainly says he doesn't want us to be one. And then you had elections in Hungary and in Serbia that both have said, we actually like Vladimir Putin and we're okay with what he's doing. You're like, okay. That's what's more troubling about what's happening in Europe, and I would even say the United States. I'm going to go there. I'm going to piss some people off. Is that within even the kind of core powerhouse parts of the liberal democratic world, it's starting to be called into question whether populations within those countries, which are devoutly liberal democracies and have promoted liberal democratic institutions for decades, nay, centuries, people within the most democratic nations on earth are now starting to grow into a bigger and bigger entities, not so sure they want to be a democracy anymore. And I'll go ahead and piss off some people in America first. I don't care. Certainly everything you've seen from the Donald Trump camp of we don't even believe in our elections anymore suggests that if your team doesn't win, then democracy doesn't matter and it doesn't count. And what that means is, even here in America, you have a sizable portion of the people, perhaps 30%, 35%, I don't know, maybe 40% of the people who say, no, I don't believe in our elections anymore because my team didn't win. And what that means is that 30 or 40% of Americans will never believe in democracy again unless their team wins, which means you actually don't believe in democracy. If your team has to win all the time for you to think it's a democracy, then guess what? You don't believe in democracy. Part of the core concept is that everyone respects the vote and everybody respects the results of the vote. And even if your team wins, you're like, well, we'll try harder next time. So we've been dealing with that in America, and it's been polarizing America for like the better part of 2 years now. One could go back 6 years if you like, since the rise of Donald Trump. But now you're starting to see those populations grow in Europe. You're seeing populations of people across European states who are not so sure that they like the whole liberal democracy thing enough if their team doesn't win. And they're starting to rise up, and again, I'm saying groups of people which are growing in numbers in country after country in Europe and the United States that are starting to say, I'm not sure I like this system anymore. I'm not sure I want to respect this system anymore. I'm not sure I want to be that open to the world anymore. I'm not sure we want to do things the way we've done them for 200 years anymore. That's what's much more troubling, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. And I know I missed a bunch of comments, so I'll go back. Let's see. I Eats Furby says, don't forget to add DT midstream for that stock list. Oh, thank you. If you could email me that, I Eats Furbies. And Harold says it's interesting since in South Korea and spring break, South Korea had an election, and the Republican candidate won the election with President Yoon winning. I should have also mentioned South Korea. Although I wouldn't say that South Korea's democratic credentials are being called into question. Everybody in South Korea respected the results of the election, even though it was close. So South Korea, I think, is still staunchly liberal democracy, even though they elected somebody more center-right. Dummy Summy saying, what stocks should we invest in? We just talked about last week how the defense industries worldwide, not just in America, are really going to be in a boom era here, a boom era of growth because of the new Cold War that's forming up right before our eyes. So, yeah, any of them, but I was looking for advice on specific groupings of defense industry stocks. Vikram says, is Pakistan going into complete chaos? Is Imran Khan going to pull the same trick Erdogan did in Turkey, remain in power for as long as he wants? Yes, Vikram. That's the question I'll be tackling first here in current events for tonight, is what's going on in Pakistan with Imran Khan basically pulling an Erdogan, pulling a Putin, pulling a Xi Jinping, pulling a list all the autocratic leaders of the world who this is the going trend. And this is what I'm talking about. This is a trend of powerful men, and it's all men, powerful men who get into power and then say, I don't care about the rules of the country anymore, or in Vladimir Putin's case, I don't care about the rules of the world anymore. I'm going to do whatever I want to stay in power, and to do what I want is that I think is the best thing for my country, which of course always includes me staying in power. I mean, that's the way these leaders work. I am the best person to lead Kazakhstan or Russia or Mongolia. I'm the best person to lead Brazil. I'm the best person to lead America. And once I'm in power, I'm going to do everything I can to make Bulgaria or Romania or Timbuktu or South Africa. Only I know how to fix everything. And therefore, the way I can first fix everything is make sure that I'm in power for the rest of my life so that I can be here to fix things for as long as possible. This is the autocratic / dictatorial playbook. They all play by the same rules. Get into power and then try to first establish yourself power for life so that you can fix everything for the rest of your life. So yeah, Vikram, that's what we're seeing happen in Pakistan. By the way, spoiler alert, it ain't going to work for Imran Khan, and we'll talk about why, that the real power in Pakistan is the military. So they will decide if Vikram, the military and the ISI will decide if Imran Khan is going to be in power for life. But we'll get there. I'm Wilbur says, natural gas, defense, ag grain companies, all winners. Oh, yeah, thank you, I'm Wilbur, for summarizing last week's Twitchcast. Dummy Summy's going to get into stocks. Me too. I'm going to get into more. Mexican Goose says, thoughts on Eric Zemmour in the French election and your prediction of the next president of France. I will get to that at the very end of this, Mexican Goose. Engine up in the hizzle. Welcome, Engine says, isn't it a more accurate statement to say they don't trust the accuracy of the election versus saying they disagree with their existence? I wonder, Engine, what's your answer, Engine? Because when one is presented with no proof of an election being hijacked, but still the folks in America who, and again, it's 30 or 35 or 40% of those polled, say, no, Trump absolutely won the election because all of it was rigged. Despite there being no proof, despite all legal jurisprudence, despite this going to the Supreme Court, despite every court ruling that says we can't find any evidence, the entire system says this was legit, and still 35 or 40% of people are saying, no, I think it was fake. At that point, with the complete lack of evidence and the entire legal system of the United States verifying it, at that point you're saying, I just don't want this system anymore because my team didn't win. And again, that might offend people, but you can't, at some point you can't keep saying it's just fake because I think it's fake. It's wrong because I think it's wrong. You actually have to have some credible evidence. And in the case of a nationwide election in a country of 340 million people, there has to be more than I heard a story about something in Michigan. That's not evidence. And with 340 million people in our country, the proof or even any evidence of a bad election should be profound. It should be everywhere. There should be evidence dripping out of the rooftops. But the fact you can't really find anything besides hearsay, if it doesn't hold up in a court of law, it means it doesn't hold up. And if you don't respect the American election at this point, you don't respect the rule of law, nor do you respect the democratic process. So again, I know people are very impassioned about Donald Trump and they're so impassioned, they just know it. They just know it. But that's not enough in a court of law, and there's no real tangible anything. So what I have to say at this point, 2 years later, is this is a rejection of the system itself. If you say the results only count if I win, then you don't respect the system at all. You don't respect the system, and you don't respect the rule of law that has verified it. Okay, that's just America. But I went into a little bit of detail, one, because Engine asked, but also because I want to make this perfectly clear. I don't care about U.S. politics, but it's important to understand what's going on in the rest of the world because you are in American politics. All of you, most of you likely are in America right now and know everything I'm talking about. And I want you to take what you understand about what's happening in America and how polarizing it is and how this growing segment of the American population is just going to reject liberal democracy unless their people win. That's a rejection of the system. And that, my friends, is what's happening in other democracies too. So this is a global phenomenon. Again, I'm not here to rant about Donald Trump. I don't particularly care. I want you to take what you understand about what's happening here and apply it because it's happening in lots of other places too. There are other leaders in other places and other political parties who are saying, we just don't like the system if we can't win every time. And so we want to move our system further and further in the direction of autocracy so that we can win every time. Do you know what politicians / leaders win every time? Vladimir Putin, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Xi Jinping, and a list of other dictators that hold sham elections. So that's the point of this rant tonight. It's not an attack on Americans who think the election is fake. You can think all you want, but at some point you have to understand this is a global theme. And because it's happening in other countries, there's something going on. There's something going on in the human psyche in multiple democracies, if not all liberal democracies, something's going on in the minds of the citizens of liberal democracy that's making them think this way and making them move towards wanting more of a move towards the autocratic right. That's the theme I want you to think about. And we're going to look at places that this is happening right this second. Hopefully I didn't offend you, Engine, or anybody else. I don't particularly mind offending anybody, but I don't really like to deal with U.S. politics because I know people go absolutely ballistic when you start talking about U.S. politics because it's too close to home. I don't mind doing it because I'm looking at the whole world, and I'm looking at major themes. And what's happening in America, in my mind, is just part of a global theme that I'm trying to understand and educate others about. So I don't really have a dog in the hunt, so to speak. I'm not attacking Trump and I'm not pro-Biden. I'm just saying, hey, this is what's happening. And it will likely crystallize in the next presidential election when perhaps half the country is just simply not going to believe anything unless their team wins. And you're like, okay, well, that's also happening in other parts of the world. Let's get to those now. Let's see. I got Mac User. I see Thorson and Engine have commented about the Trump example I was just given. Mac User says, and KMI, Kinder Morgan. Back to stocks. Harold says it's interesting. Oh, yeah, we talked about that already, about South Korea's vote. Jay Rout says, I feel you're right, but not entirely sure. Burka says, Dems question the Democratic election in 2016. More importantly, the Dems constantly talk about wanting to dissolve the Electoral College, which would undermine our democracy and create a one-party system. The left in the U.S. cry just as much as when their team doesn't win. Sure, Burkus. Absolutely. Burkus, has the Democratic Party or a large section of the U.S. population from the Democratic side or the left-wing side or the liberal side ever outright said the whole thing was fake and we don't recognize the results? To my knowledge, that hasn't happened, at least not in modern times. So there is something different going on here. Mexican Goose going to keep me in suspense till the end. And Art Cover C says he's becoming a content creator now. I don't even know what that means, but I like it. I Eats Furby says, can you touch on what Team West ideally wants to happen in Pakistan? Oh, I Eats Furbies. Nobody knows what the U.S. wants in Pakistan. And quite frankly, I'm not sure people in Pakistan know what they want Pakistan to do. Pakistan is an exceptionally complex relationship with the United States. Most of it's not good. But let me get through some more comments and I'll talk about Pakistan in more detail. Burke says 34% of Republicans. Oh, damn it, I lost the thread. For Burkus, 34% of Republicans thought the 2020 election was stolen. 33% of Democrats thought the 2016 election was stolen. They're two sides of the same coin. I still disagree, Burkus. Again, this is why I don't talk about U.S. politics, because now you're getting fired up, and I'm not trying to fire you up. 33% of Democrats, I don't think thought the election was stolen. I don't know where you're getting that number from or that poll from. People may not like the Electoral College, but everybody respected the results. So you can say I'm not happy about the results, but I'm not sure who in 2016 was doing a poll that said everything was false and the Republicans screwed up the whole system and it's all a lie. I mean, I remember 2016. I don't remember that being a big issue that came up. Everybody was saying, oh, we don't like the Electoral College because the popular vote would have put in the Democrat, but that's not how our system works. So the Electoral College put in the other person. So people were super unhappy, but saying it was stolen is referring to how people didn't like the system of the Electoral College. The folks on the Republican side today are saying, no, the entire thing was a sham and a lie. I don't think Democrats as a general group have said the entire election was a complete sham and a lie. Those are two different things altogether. Verka says, I'm having fun. Let's go to Pakistan. First time chatter from Zibusina123 says, hey, just wanted to say that you're amazing. I believe you and you can do anything. Keep up the good work. Chase your dreams. Remember to smile. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. What do I need to buy from you? Please tell me you're selling Beanie Babies. Okay, I'm sorry. That was really dating myself. Does anybody know what a Beanie Baby is? Are they all dead now? Okay, so let's go to just a couple of stories here because I wasn't going to a rant and rave till all hours of the morning tonight. I just saw this theme, and sorry, we already digressed talking about the U.S., but I think it was a healthy digression for us to put some things out there so that you understand the unease and I won't say right wing, but the movement in America of the, let's say, the Republican Party, the Trump Republican Party, is not a isolated, solitary thing. That's the main point I'm trying to make here tonight. And what we got going on, and I'll start with Pakistan, even though they aren't necessarily the most a democratic nation ever, all right, is that the same playbook is starting to be picked up by leaders, even in kind of newly formed democracies or barely existing democracies or on-again, off-again democracies, as well as fully established democracies like Hungary and the United States and France. We're seeing this same thing. So Pakistan, ever since its birth in 1947, so for those of you not in the know, Pakistan was part of British India. It was a colony of the British for a couple hundred years. And then when it became independent after World War II, because after World War II, everybody's like, Britain, you got to give up the colony crap, dudes. You cannot have a colony that's 1.3 billion people, all right? You got to let them people go. So Britain said, okay, we're walking out in 1947. Hindu-dominated India was going to be a single super state, but there was enough Muslims in Hindu-dominated India that said, hey, we don't want to be part of a Hindu-dominated India state because we'll get persecuted or picked on. We want our own state. So even though India is, say, 75 or 80% Hindu, it's 15 or 20% Muslim. And that wouldn't be that big a deal in most countries, except there's over 1 billion people there. So that's like 200 or 250 million Muslims that were going to be a minority group. Try to imagine that, by the way. 250 million people that are a minority group in this country. And so as a result of that, for the 2 or 3 years leading up to India independence, or I should say South Asian independence, people on both sides fought and went back and forth and negotiated, and they came up with basically a two-state solution. And in 1947, India, Hindu-dominated India, was created, and then a West Pakistan was created, and by the way, an East Pakistan was created. So it was two states, India and East and West Pakistan. East and West Pakistan, it's like saying North and South Carolina, all right? It was the same political entity, but it was separated. India was in the middle, and it was the east side and a west side of Pakistan. I'll cut the story short. On East Pakistan, eventually in the 70s, they decided to go their own way, and now you know them as a Bangladesh. So all three of these entities, two at the time, but three entities eventually, have, since their inception, been democracies. Now, Pakistan is much more problematic than India, because India has been a democracy. It's the world's largest democracy. And Pakistan kind of has been a democracy, but really always more leaning on the right and sometimes towards the hard autocratic right. And sometimes the military comes in and takes over and it's a military dictatorship. And sometimes a military guy from the military ends up being president. So it's kind of a military dictatorship / dictatorship. It's been on again, off again. The points I want to make about Pakistan real quick so you understand what's happening right this second in their march away from democracy is that there's politics in Pakistan, and then there's the army. And quite frankly, let's call it the military, not the army. The military of Pakistan has always held the real power. Sometimes they have openly held the power and thrown out the government and just for a military dictatorship. But more often than not, especially coming into the modern era, they allow elections. They allow a government to form. They allow people to run for office. They allow voting. But the Pakistan military is still the most entrenched, probably most richest, and most powerful entity within Pakistan. Okay? There's a sub-branch of it called the ISI. It's the equivalent of like the CIA and the FBI rolled into one. That's even more secretive and more powerful than the CIA and the FBI rolled into one. So the ISI, that's the intelligence services, and the military are the core power players that really hold the real power in Pakistan. Okay, they have sometimes held direct power, oftentimes let the government be a government. But when the government starts to do things the military doesn't want, it's bizarre and how quickly those politicians will go away because the military doesn't want them to be there. At the same time all this is happening in the last 50 years, the United States, during the entire Cold War and beyond, was kind of friends with Pakistan. This is confusing to students of international politics or people who don't know much about international politics because it would seem an easy thing to say, well, obviously India is a democracy. The United States is a democracy. Obviously, the United States is good buddies with India. Not really. Not at all. India has been distant from the United States. India, much like Russia, considers itself its own powerful entity in its own civilization and its own power center, and so is not really allied tightly with other democracies or anybody else, quite frankly. Pakistan, on the other hand, is a smaller country than India, a poorer country than India, and a slightly weaker country than India. And so it did cultivate powerful allies, and during the Cold War, it allied up with the United States. And the United States, for the entire Cold War and beyond, has funneled money, weapons, sold weapons, shared intelligence to a limited degree, done a lot of things. The U.S. military has had a decent to strong relationship with the Pakistani military for decades. When I say strong, I don't mean positive. It's just there have been periods where the U.S. and the Pakistani military agencies work together on a lot of things. What things, you might ask, Boyer? The entire Cold War. I don't know if you saw Charlie Wilson's War in my class. The United States military worked with the Pakistani military to help fund the Mujahideen to fight the Soviets who had invaded Afghanistan from 1979 to 1989. 79, 89, to get that right? The U.S. government has kind of helped shape the Pakistani military in terms of its technologies. And why? Well, because we helped the Pakistanis helped us fight back the Soviets in Afghanistan, and then we're bringing it up to the modern era. The Pakistanis helped fight terrorism. You might remember this guy named Osama bin Laden. When they took over Afghanistan, the U.S. military was trying to get the Pakistani military to help fend off and root out terrorism all around this area of Afghanistan and northern Pakistan, by the way. So this is a long-standing relationship that's mostly business professional and business military professional between the United States and Pakistan. It has not sat well with most of the Pakistani people. So especially coming into the modern era, the United States was still relying on the Pakistani military and the ISI to help root out bin Laden and the Taliban and terrorism and all this other stuff. And quite frankly, and sorry if you're Pakistani or you're in the ISI, please don't come and kill me. Quite frankly, the Pakistani military never was fully sold on rooting out terrorism. In fact, they might have been helping fund it. So they were in this weird situation where they helped create the Taliban in a sense. And they helped create a scenario in Afghanistan that found Osama bin Laden and his crew being harbored in it. And they kind of created this monster that then the United States was giving them money and guns to help fight against. So they only kind of did. And that's where the U.S. relationship with Pakistan really starts to go south. It's about 20 years now. Right after 9/11 and the war on terror began, the friction between the United States and Pakistan really started, and it's gone nowhere but downhill since then. Depending on what leader of the military and or what leader of the country, the relations might be okay, and then the next leader, they might be really bad, but they've not been good. And the closer we get up to the modern era, you have, and this has happened maybe under Bush, but under Obama, and probably still under Trump too, but I think mostly under Obama, you had basically extrajudicial killings, in the name of the war on terror, you had drone attacks in northern Pakistan and in Afghanistan that did kill civilians, and quite frankly, a lot of them. You can go look it up. And this has not sat well with the Pakistani population, who increasingly see a United States that's killing their citizens, and they don't like what's going on, and they perhaps don't even like that their government's cooperating with them. Now, why did I give you all that backstory? So that you understand this story right here that says a no confidence vote stalls in Pakistan. This dude named Imran Khan is the current president of Pakistan. Imran Khan came to power. He actually has been trying to get into power for perhaps 10 or 20 years. He is very much a Trumpian figure. He was a cricket star. He was super famous. He was a jet setter on the world stage back in the 70s and 80s. He was a superstar cricket player, helped lead the team, I think, to the first international cricket title, the Pakistani team, the national team. And so he was a celebrity who then later in life got into politics. He formed his own political party, and he finally got into being the prime minister just 4 years ago after working at it for a decade or two. It's all he ever wanted. Again, a very Trumpian-like story. Made his wealth, was famous, and then worked for 10 or 20 years to become the leader of the country. Now, he came to power partly on a platform of, we don't like the United States. The United States has been using us as a puppet. Anybody who likes the United States is a traitor to our country. When I get into power, I'm going to clean up all the corruption in our state. I'm going to fix our economy, which has been in a shambles for decades. And I'm going to move us away from the United States and more towards China, relationships and economic partnership with China, and perhaps even Russia. And the Pakistani military was kind of okay with that. Again, if the Pakistani military and the ISI don't want someone to be president or prime minister of Pakistan, guess what? They're not going to be. Because remember, I started this 15 minutes ago saying the military and the ISI hold the real power in Pakistan. So they let this guy go ahead and come into power, although they found him questionable. And I'm getting a bunch of comments over here all of a sudden. So let me go check out what everybody's yelling about over here. Let's see. First time chatter from Zayad the Tyrant. Says, could it be argued that the head of the Pakistani military is the true leader? Yes, Zayad. I think you could make that argument. Again, there are other countries that have powerful militaries that could take over the government anytime they want, and sometimes do keep the government in check. I'm thinking particularly of Turkey. Turkey, for most of its existence, had a constitutional clause which gave the military power to wipe out the whole government. I mean, not with guns, just fire them, and to redo elections if they thought that the country was becoming too Islamic or too radical. And so Pakistan is like that, but more covert. They really do hold the true power. So when you're in a situation, and that's why I'm saying Pakistan has always been kind of a democracy, because the Pakistani people, I think they do want a democracy, and they do go vote. Voter turnout's usually high, and people do participate in the democracy. And I think that's the system they want. But it kind of has these, I won't say puppet masters, but it has this military ISI kind of hurdle that has to be, that any potential leader has to get over in order to become the leader. So is that a true democracy? I mean, it's a truer democracy than Russia is, because Russia, one political party now holds all the power, doesn't recognize no free press, doesn't recognize any elections except their own elections. In terms of they win every election, otherwise they're like, no, it didn't count, we'll do it again. Turkey has been going down that route too. Erdogan in Turkey, several times in the last 5 years, they held an election and Erdogan's group lost, and he said, okay, let's redo the election. So they're going down that road too. And again, for the Super Trump fans in the hizzle, don't get testy with me talking about Trump. I'm just saying, think about what I'm seeing in other parts of the world that are following the same playbook. If we don't like the election results, then we don't recognize them, and or we're going to call for a recount immediately, or just throw out the results and do what we want to do. That's the trend I'm seeing, and I worry that might be the way that the Trump-led Republican Party is going in the United States. But again, that's a side tangent. So back to Pakistan. Oh, I'm sorry, what was the question? Oh, is the Pakistani military the true leader? You tell me. it's a democracy in form, and they go through many of the things democracies do, and they do elect non-military leaders, but it's definitely not a full-fledged liberal democracy in the Western Europe American sense, for sure. It's closer to a democracy now in the Turkish sense. But we can have that discussion and have that argument. I'm not even sure what Engine's referring to there with 0% chance. First-time chatter from Camaro says, extrajudicial, right? It's such a great word, extrajudicial. Thor loves the cricket. You're the only one, Thor. Turd Maestro's up in the hills. Well, welcome back, Maestro. Yes, this is the real Plaid Avenger, Maestro. Are you the real turd? It's not a simulation of the Plaid Avenger. Thank you, Engine. Mexican Goose says, I do not think AQ Khan can be put into the business professionalism category. Oh, that's a good, deep reference there, Mexican Goose. That's too much for me to explain to everybody with AQ Khan. But I love that comment. So what's happened is, super popular, Trumpian story, prime minister now in power in Pakistan. It actually is a testament that it is kind of a functioning democracy, that Imran Khan got to be president because he is a civilian, and he actually said that Pakistan's corrupt, and he actually said the military is part of the problem. So it is a testament that there are some strong democratic elements in the Pakistani situation that allowed him to even become president. I'm sorry, prime minister. Prime minister. Now, what happened then that now I'm saying even Imran Khan is giving up on liberal democracy? Well, he got into power, like I said, 3 or 4 years ago. Things have not gone well. Maybe you heard about COVID. Maybe you've heard about a million other things. And Pakistan's quality of life for its citizens has not gotten much better. He has taken tremendous flack. He is trying to now reach out to China and Russia to make deals to try to get money flowing in and economic activity. But COVID was particularly damaging to Pakistan. And so he's had a bad run. And what happened 3 or 4 days ago, last week, there was talk within his political party and the parliament in general of they're going to have a no confidence vote. This is hard for us to understand because we have a direct election system. But in parliamentary democracies, the parliament or the political party that controls parliament, and it's a majority. So let's say if the Republicans in the U.S. Congress, if Republicans controlled both the House and the Senate, that they could, as a majority, say, we are going to call for a vote of no confidence in the president. That's the best analogy I can give you. And if a majority of people vote of no confidence, the president has to go away and we elect somebody else. That's it's not a great analogy because we do direct elections, but that's kind of the way the parliamentary system is. The political party in power in the parliament gets to pick the human. The people don't pick what human's going to be prime minister. The party does. So you go out and vote for the party. In this analogy, if everyone in America went out and 51% of the Americans voted for the Republican Party, then the Republican Party would get to say, we are now in charge of Congress by a simple majority, and we choose Donald Trump to be the leader. So that's how parliamentary procedures work in parliamentary democracies. And so Imran Khan is the appointed prime minister of the political party that was in power. But they had to do a coalition, what's called coalition politics. And so several different political parties got together to actually come together. It was like, say, it's like the Greens and the Liberals and, Never Trumpers got together. And those three formed 51% of the parliament. And those three got together and said, okay, we're going to choose Joe Biden. That's how Imran Khan got into power. It was a coalition of 3 different political groups that got together and said, we own 51% of the vote, or more actually, and we're going to pick Imran Khan as the prime minister. Well, what happened last week is one of those political parties pulled out, and they said, nope, we think he sucks. We no longer support him. And even people within his political party are saying, this guy sucks. Everything's getting worse. We're going to have a vote of no confidence, basically fire him, and then we'll pick somebody else. Okay, that's how it works in parliamentary democracy. That was supposed to happen yesterday. 1 hour before the vote, Imran Khan, the prime minister, dissolved the entire parliament and fired them all and said, everybody go home. And we're going to hold fresh elections to vote for your seats. So in this bizarre reversal, instead of him getting fired, he fired everyone else, and now they have to go run for election again in their political districts. Do you follow me there? Now, this immediately caused chaos in Pakistan because it hasn't happened before. Usually people kind of go gracefully, and they're like, oh, okay, well, or they'll say, well, I think I'll get enough votes to stay in office. And then if they hold the vote, and if they lose, they're like, well, that sucks. I thought I had the votes. By the way, this happens in Australia all the time. All the time, the Australians put up a leader, and then their own political party fires them, and they put up somebody else. So that was what was supposed to happen. Then that is what did happen. Imran Khan said, I'm firing the whole government. Now you can't fire me. It's thrown everything into chaos. It went to the Supreme Court. It was supposed to be decided on in the Supreme Court today, if it was even legal for him to do this. And the Supreme Court is deadlocked, so they couldn't decide on it. They're still under deliberations right now as we speak. The point is, this is another leader who was put into power via a democratic mechanism that has now said, I don't believe in the mechanism that put me in power anymore. I want to stay in power, and so I'm going to wipe out all the rules and do what I want to do in my country to stay in power. And that, my friends, is the opposite of a liberal democracy. By the way, if you didn't pick up on this already, it was rumored that the military has already pulled support for Imran Khan too. And I've already told you the military has got the real power here. So if this is allowed to stand, this will be new ground for Pakistan. If the military does not intervene, or the military could go influence the Supreme Court to declare that unconstitutional, which is probably what's happening. If it's allowed to stand, and they do have to rerun all the elections for the parliament, this is new ground for a new low for democracy within Pakistan, a country that already was barely a democracy. Now do you see what I'm so fired up about? Now let me go to the comments and see what I've missed. Let's see. Mexico says, doing a project for another class about the Atoms for Peace program in Pakistan, so AQ Khan is on the brain. Yes, I shouldn't have dismissed all the folks who do not know that reference. AQ Khan is probably one of the most famous Pakistanis of all time within Pakistan. Probably as famous as Imran Khan, the current prime minister. AQ Khan, for those of you that don't know, is a genius nuclear physicist who helped develop Pakistan's nuclear weapons program. And he wasn't alone. Lots of other people helped too. But AQ Khan got famous because then he gave the blueprints of how to develop nuclear weapons to North Korea and possibly Iran and several other states. A couple other African states too, I think. And this is like decades ago. This caused an international uproar. His reasoning, by the way, is interesting. His reasoning for to have done this was, why do the Western states who own the knowledge think they own the knowledge for nuclear weapons? Why are the Western states who already have weapons saying the rest of us aren't allowed to have weapons? It's an interesting argument. Most of us are firmly against anyone having nuclear weapons. So most of us didn't want anybody to have the secrets of nuclear weapons, which is why most people are like, oh, dude, what did you do that for? But I understand. I always empathize why people do things, and I get why he did it. I just hate it that there's more nuclear weapons now because of it. He basically wanted to make nuclear weapons more democratic. Believe it or not. He's like, that's not fair that these countries get it, but they're saying no one else is allowed to have it. Okay. Now you're caught up in Pakistan, I think. And the Supreme Court is hearing the case. They are still deadlocked as of today. Everybody's saying that everybody's treasonous. And by the way, I will add this in. I find this kind of offensive, but, you know, it depends on your country of birth, your national pride, and all this other stuff. But the offensive thing that I find here is that Imran Khan has been using his unpopularity and accusing anyone who does not support him of treason, and saying anyone who doesn't like me anymore and anyone who even votes for no confidence in me is a stooge of the Americans. This is all the Americans. The United States is doing all of this, and the United States has bombed Pakistani citizens and killed, and they're the enemy, and the United States is evil. And if anybody votes against me, you're voting for evil. You're voting for. All my political opponents are all paid for by the CIA. All of them. They're all crooked. And you're like, dude, really? Is there any truth of that? Likely not. Is somebody in the CIA's pocket? Likely. But the entire political establishment, that's extremism that really irritates me. And it's extremism. Anyone who's not for me is being paid by the US CIA and they're crooked. And you're like, that can't possibly be right. And you're just demonizing the entire country of America for all of the ills of not just of your country, but of your particular position that you have failed. But no, I didn't fail. It's all the United States' fault. And he has been beating that drum hard. Also, does anybody remember where Imran Khan was the day that Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine? Anyone? Does anybody remember where Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, was the actual second that Russian troops were sent into Ukraine? Anyone in the comments? Anyone? Burkus says, Imran, I am the Senate. I am the state. REB says, really pulled in a Uno reverse card on him. Boom! REBs, that's a good one. Uno reverse. Uno reverse. I love that. Checkmate Pakistan. Did he visit with Putin, says Dummy Summy. Gabe says, why, he was in Russia with Putin. Yes, he was. He was doing a joint press conference when Putin announced that they were invading Ukraine. And when questioned on it, Imran Khan said, well, I mean, sounds like a plan. So he is right. Imran Khan is absolutely right to suggest that the U.S. military establishment does not like him. That is 100% correct. He's probably 100% incorrect in assuming that the U.S. government currently and its foreign policy does not like him. He's probably also correct because he is not only cozying up to Vladimir Putin, he is given tacit approval and perhaps even support to the demolition of Ukrainian sovereignty. So that really doesn't make the U.S. happy. But him saying that the U.S. is behind why I suck at my job is a bridge too far for me. And if there's any blame of why he's going down the tubes, it's either himself or forces within Pakistan. So I just kind of find that blame game, especially the all-powerful, it's the United States' fault. Everything in the world is the United States' fault. Everything going wrong in my administration is the United States' fault. Because this is where Vladimir Putin's now coming from. Everything's the United States. Oh, woe is us. The United States is out to get us. Again, am I suggesting that the United States and the CIA and other intelligence organizations from the United States have clean hands and they're good people and they've never done anything to these countries? Hell no. Of course they've done terrible things behind the scenes. For goodness sakes, all you got to do is go watch Zero Dark 30 to see about how the U.S. CIA and the military behaved in Afghanistan and in the torture chambers and all this other stuff. No one is clean here. But that doesn't mean that every single thing that's happened to Imran Khan has been a calculated movement by the U.S. military. That is balderdash, sir. Balderdash. And you're using it as a political firebomb to try to then tar and feather any Pakistanis who might want to stand up for democracy. You're saying they're treasonous because they don't agree with you. Again, why am I raging about this? Because think about that game plan. Everyone who's not with me is against me. Everyone who doesn't agree with my political party is treasonous. They're not bad. They're treasonous. If you don't vote for me, you're treasonous. You don't even like our country. That is extremist philosophy, autocratic extremist philosophy. That is expanding on the global stage. That's why I was talking about Pakistan. By the way, if you're in my class right now, 10 points. If you're in class right this second, if you email me within the next 2 minutes saying it's exactly 9 o'clock and Imran Khan is the president of Pakistan, you'll get 10 points. But you got to email me. You got to email me in the next 2 minutes. Okay. Let's see. But let me finish up the other news stories that are now even closer to home. So I'm worried about Pakistan because they are now perhaps giving up on democracy. We'll see. By the way, for those of you who don't know him, that's him right there, Imran Khan. He actually, before they even voted, said he would not accept the results. Again, does this sound familiar? I won't, no matter what the vote is, unless I win, I won't accept the results. You're like, okay. The playbook is now set, and it seems like other leaders are using it, not just in America, not just in Europe. That's Imran right there in the middle. Good-looking guy. Good-looking cricketer. That's why he was an international celebrity for so long. However, what also happened in the last 48 hours, it's been a busy 48 hours on the election rejection circuit worldwide. Because yesterday, or what is today? Yesterday, Sunday, at the same time that fracas was going down in Pakistan, Hungary and Serbia both held 100% legitimate elections. So I'll say this in defense right up front. I'm not suggesting that they're pulling an Imran Khan or saying the election's not real. These are legitimate and verified elections in democratic nations of Hungary and Serbia, both of which have leaders who are pro-Vladimir Putin. Both of these elections were won by the incumbent who were pro-Putin people, who are pro-Putin people. Serbia's President Vučić won his second term, and it's not surprising he's a pro-Russian, pro-Putin person because Serbia is a long time Russian ally. Even during the Cold War, even when they were part of Yugoslavia, communist Yugoslavia, the Serbian people have a long-standing kind of ethnic, not even so much linguistic, but ethnic and cultural affinity and tie to the Russian ethnic people. And so the fact that Serbia is kind of pro-Putin and kind of okay with the Ukrainian invasion, not surprising. Hungary is the country in Europe that everybody's much more worried about because under their leader, one Viktor Orban, let's see if I got a bigger picture of him. Actually, I got a bigger picture of him right here. That's Viktor Orban. I think he just won his third term. And he is a guy you may have heard about already who has been giving the EU a wedgie for the better part of a decade. Under Viktor Orban, he is a center-right, if not far-right political candidate, political person, kind of law and order, ultra-conservative, traditionalist, who kind of shut down the Hungarian borders to refugees and immigrants. And he's the full Monty kind of right-wing political spectrum, anti-immigrant, make Hungary great again, everything for Hungary first. Even though we're in the EU, we're going to break the rules we don't like to benefit Hungary. Free press has started to get much less free in modern Hungary. He controls the lever of powers in the judiciary. They fired a lot of the judiciary and replaced it with hand-picked people who would vote the way they want them to. in both legislation and in judiciary. So again, does that playbook sound familiar to you at all as well? Same playbook, different country, and he has popular support. So the liberal, left-wing liberal political people in Hungary have been chafing under this guy's rule, but they won. He just won a decently good margin election yesterday. So the Hungarian people have seen kind of a rise in their standard of living. He's all about getting Hungary first, and so he's benefited like pensions, and he's done some things that a lot of Hungarian people like. He's done some things that the people on the left don't particularly like at all. But that's what's going on, and he resoundingly won. Before this election, by the way, he had been cozying up to Putin. It's questionable under his leadership that Hungary will even remain in the EU, because he is much more open to dealing and wanting to deal with Russia. And he has not gone along with the sanctions against Russia because of the Ukrainian war. He did at the outset, if you guys had tuned in when I was talking about a month ago, he made a surprise move about a month or 5 weeks ago where he came out and said, I don't agree with Putin's invasion of Ukraine. I do respect Ukrainian sovereignty. I actually reported on it because I'm like, oh, that's kind of surprising because this guy is a Putin lover. And he didn't say Putin was bad. He just said, I don't agree with this. And so a lot of folks thought, oh, okay, well, Orban's coming back around. He is getting more kind of liberal. He is going to stand with the EU and the Western democracies against Russia. So he said that. But then as soon as he won the election last night, he came out and slammed the president of Ukraine, saying, you're a joke and a loser. And I'm all in with Russia, and we shouldn't be doing anything to them. And you're like, holy crap, this guy just played his people. So he actually just was doing that to save face, I think, a month ago when things were really bad in the Ukrainian invasion and the world was mounting a defense against Russia. He was playing up to that and saying, yeah, I'm part of that team, but it's now that he got re-election, he's like, no, I'm not. Ha, psych! And you're like, damn, did that guy really just do that? So that's what's happening in Hungary and in Serbia. Again, legitimate elections. So that is suggesting that it's not a dictator who's breaking the rules to stay in power. In these countries, in these liberal democracies, you have a growing minority who just want to go in that direction and maybe don't mind Vladimir Putin so much. And don't mind the old mantra of might makes right. And they don't mind if another democracy gets gobbled up by a dictator. You're like, okay, this is a unique spin. And again, we have people in America who kind of like Putin too. So this is a new culture. That's what I'm pointing out here that I've just not seen before. And it's fascinating. And it's happening not just in America. It's happening in other parts of the democratic world, Hungary and Serbia for two. Back to the comments. He should have stuck to cricket. Vikram says, what would be the consequences of Pakistan chaotic democracy spilling over into its neighbors or even in the Western countries? There won't be any spilling, Vikram. Pakistan is always, I won't say Pakistan's an island, but Pakistan and India don't like each other. So there's a solid border there. So there's nothing spilling over into India. The northern border of Pakistan is Central Asia, particularly Afghanistan. They've got their own chaos. One could say the Afghan chaos and the Pakistani chaos are related, so there's no spilling in either direction there. To its east is Iran and Middle Eastern countries. Iran's not a liberal democracy, so there's no spilling there. And so what you have is, it's not that what's going on in Pakistan is going to directly affect any other democracies. It's just another fledgling democracy that's going to perhaps bite the dust and cozy up more with China and Russia and just have a singular leader. It's like, you know what? We tried. We're not a liberal democracy. We're just going to do what we want. But the military will be the ones that decide that, not Imran Khan. D. Georgiev in the house says the Serbian president is kind of a weird diplomatic guy, to be honest. He is pro-Russia and Putin, but at the same time, he's also pro-Kosovo independence. Oh, I did not know that, Georgiev. and is pro-EU, which is kind of the opposite agenda his supporters support. Yeah, I didn't even know that much about that dude, and I just assumed that he was pro-Putin and pro-Russia because the average Serb is pro-Putin and pro-Russia. But I didn't realize he was pro-EU. I wonder if he'll maintain that now that he's gotten reelected, because there wouldn't be much point of even wanting or even pretending to be pro-EU or even trying to get in the EU if at the same time you're pro-Putin and pro-Russia. The EU is not going to accept you. And in fact, Orban may be seeing the exit of Hungary out of the EU. Again, I don't think it'll come to that. The EU doesn't want that, but if he starts flouting more rules now that he's solidly in power for another year, 2 years, 5 years, I don't know what the term is, he could do all kinds of things which are going to exacerbate and aggravate the EU. So there might be moves made against Hungary's membership there. And maybe he pulls out. Maybe he just says, you know what, we're partnering up with Russia. We're out. We'll see. I feel like that would be a disaster for the Hungarian economy, but one never knows what these guys think. And once in power, they're all consumed with staying in power, which again is the opposite of a liberal democracy. Thanks for the info, D. Georgiev. C.D. Thorson says, what's Putin going to do next? No idea on that one. Not even sure. He doesn't even know what he's having for breakfast yet. Mexican Goose says he's going to be Putin on the Ritz. There you go, Mexican Goose. Thank you. That one never gets old. Shen48 up in the hizzle saying, this is my American naivety coming into play, but I thought Imran Khan would have been pretty pro-West since he's Western educated, not very religious, and was known for being a playboy in his prime cricket star days in England. You are absolutely right, Shen48. You are 100% right, Shen48. Imran Khan is just one of those political chameleons. Again, very Trumpian. And I don't know if you take that as a compliment or an insult if you're Donald Trump or a Trump supporter. But they're chameleons. They do things and they say, yes, well, I've done that in life and now I'm this. And Imran Khan and Donald Trump are so similar. They're both exceptionally non-religious people. Let's just be honest. I think even Donald Trump would say that. They're not religious people. Donald Trump has never been a diehard churchgoer or had any kind of religious affiliation in public or at all, probably even in private. Imran Khan was not really a devout Muslim. There's no way you could call him a devout Muslim in the 70s and 80s. He was a playboy. He was known as a playboy in London. He was at clubs. And then both of these guys got old and then wanted to run for office and suddenly have become devout. Jesus is going to save us. Yes. Oh, Allah, I love Allah. Praise Allah. Yes. And so it's been part of both of these men's campaigns into power to court the religious conservatives. And in both cases, they had to get religious conservatives on board or they would have never gotten into power. So it is a interesting irony for both of these guys. And you're right, Shen. I think Khan has spent at least half of his lifetime in Western countries. And somehow, when he went back and decided to be a politician in Pakistan, he's been able to remake himself as a devout Muslim who's standing up for Pakistan and is anti-Western because everything wrong in the world is because of the West, particularly the United States. And that anti-Western, specifically the anti-American theme of his platform is certainly one of the reasons why he got elected. So he's got to keep ringing that bell because it's kind of a dog whistle. It's what got people's attention. And they thought he was going to clean up this town and make us a more devout, awesome economy and country, and he has not done it. Again, not shocking for somebody who spent the better part of their life as a playboy in London that he couldn't fix the Pakistani economy. But what the hell do I know, all right? I'm not trying to pretend like I could fix the Pakistani economy, but, the world now and country after country in liberal democracies are electing people that have no real credible experience doing anything. I mean, at least Orban is a lifelong businessman, a politician. So I'm not saying we have to elect politicians, but should we elect people that are actually good at something besides celebrity. Anyway, what the hell do I know? The way I was going to end up with tonight is that the elections I've talked about so far are not even earth-shattering. It was largely predicted that Orban would stay in power. At least I thought he was going to stay in power because, again, he's done right by a majority of Hungarians whose lives are better than they were, say, 5 or 10 years ago, especially older folks, and older folks vote more. So not crazy that he got reelected. Not crazy the Serbian guy got elected. Imran Khan firing the whole government, that's a little surprising. But again, they're not really a full-fledged devout democracy there. This is the one to watch, though. And again, remember, I'm not making fun of the Americans or the Pakistanis or anybody else. I'm getting you to think about a global theme that's happening. And here is where it's going to be the biggest deal. And it's coming up like next week. And what I'm referring to here is the French election. The French, who forever have been the most liberal country on planet Earth, the most liberal of the liberal democracies of planet Earth, have had within even their country a growing minority that may become a majority who are now starting to lean towards the conservative, if not extreme conservative right. Now, am I suggesting that they're going to overthrow the government or not recognize results or make themselves rulers for life? No. I'm saying it's such a big deal because France is the bastion of liberal democracy. And the election that's happening next week, it is unsure who's going to win it. So even in the bastion of liberal democracy on planet Earth, a lady named Marine Le Pen, who is an extreme right-winger, again, very much like Donald Trump, France first, seal off the borders, no immigration, probably pull out of international organizations, maybe get rid of the EU because it's a bloated bureaucracy that France shouldn't be a part of. This is a theme that is resonating with voters worldwide, not just America, not just Hungary, not just Russia. This is a theme that's resonating everywhere. And that's why democracy's been taking on a chin. And that's why I'll end with, if Marine Le Pen, who is surging in the polls right now, defeats current President Emmanuel Macron, this will be a earth-shattering election. And no one, of course, in the United States press is paying attention to it because they're like, who cares about the French? Whatever. I'm telling you, person to person, all you peoples, this is the one to watch. Much the same way that if you want to figure out what's going to happen in Ukraine, watch China. They're the ones that are going to decide if Russia floats or sinks. If you worry about autocracy superseding democracy on planet Earth, don't look at Ukraine. Don't look at China. Don't even look at America. Look at what happens in France this coming week. Because if France goes right-wing, all bets are off for liberal democracy worldwide. I shouldn't say that. Some will survive, but the movement that has been the strongest political movement since World War II will officially be coming to a conclusion. The movement in growth of democracy will officially come to an end if the right wing end up sweeping the French election. Now, even if they squeak by, it's not that big a deal. But if they get 55 or 60% or more of the vote in France, that's a big deal. That's saying that now a growing minority is turning into a majority in the established democracies themselves that don't like the way that democracies have been operating since World War II. That means a sea change is coming. I don't know if you know what a sea change is, but if you've ever been on the high seas, a sea change is a movement so big and it comes from a different direction and it's slow and it's huge, but your ship's going in a different direction. And the French election may end up being a sea change for liberal democracy worldwide that certainly will influence what happens in the United States next presidential election, which may also be a sea change for liberal democracy if the French don't start that movement first. Boom, mic drop. You heard it here first. Sorry, it's time for me to go have some wine. Now, let me finish up. Thank you, C.D. Thorson, for Vladimir Putin. That's a good one, Vladimir Putin. Mexican Goose says, I know Russia's corrupt. The proof is in the pudding. Another good one from the Goose. Vikram says, but Pakistan will be the only unstable democracy with nuclear weapons. Correct, Vikram. Although your follow-up is consequences could be dire. I disagree, Vikram, because who controls those nuclear weapons? Who controls the nuclear weapons? The military controls the nuclear weapons. So the military has always had control of the nuclear weapons, Vikram. The president or prime minister, whether they're left wing or right wing, whoever's in charge of the Pakistani government, they have not held the real power, and they've certainly not held the real power over nuclear weapons. So I am not terribly concerned. Imran Khan can try to pull off this coup, but that don't mean he's going to get control of these nuclear weapons. It will only mean that the Pakistani military will likely step back in and take over the government and just be more open about it. So that would be my prediction for Pakistan. I don't think the nuclear component gets any more destabilized because of what's happening in politics, because the military will step in to calm down the politics when it has to, and it's still going to control the nuclear weapons as it always has anyway. If Imran Khan said, I want to go nuke America tomorrow, the military would just laugh at him, be like, dude, you couldn't, we wouldn't even nuke your mother, all right? You don't have no real power over those things. So it's not like the United States where a radical president could get elected by, popular vote or electoral college and just be like, I'm Bob and Russian, I don't care. I mean, go back and watch Dr. Strangelove if you want to. You could get a radical in America that could launch a nuclear weapon. Possibly. No, not even in the UK. Possibly France. That's because they directly elect their leaders, and their leaders are also simultaneously commander-in-chiefs. Prime ministerships are different. There's no way the prime minister would make an ultimate call, but their systems are much more integrated that they would have to ask people. The parliament would be involved. The Queen would be involved in England. There's no way the Prime Minister Boris would launch a nuclear weapon without the Queen blessing it first. But countries that a single human could launch a nuclear weapon because they felt like it, the United States, North Korea, Iran if they ever got one. Who am I missing here? That's all I can think of. China. Xi Jinping can do anything he wants. He controls all levels of the government and the entire military. So Xi, Biden, Xi, Kim, these are people that don't have to ask anybody for permission to launch a nuclear weapon. Imran Khan, his finger ain't nowhere near that button, Vikram. No way. So I ain't too worried about that part of it. Mexican Goose says the United States could be classified as an unstable democracy. I agree. Mexican Goose. I do believe the American system is currently in an unstable situation. And Didi SHD says we should elect Will Smith next. He's good at showing his emotion, and he's a straight shooter. Agreed, TT. As long as he dresses like he's in Independence Day, I'll vote for him then. As long as he punches an alien and not Chris Rock, I'll vote for him. Jay Rout says he will make sure no one mentions his wife's name. That's right, his wife is safe. The rest of us, I'm not so sure. Ziad, the Tyrant, says France is going to hate Muslims even more now with Le Pen. Yes, and that's a follow-up point. Thank you for reminding me, Ziad. I'm not saying that France is going to not be a liberal democracy anymore if they elect Le Pen. I'm only suggesting that a majority of their population will be becoming much more conservative and will not be as liberal when it comes to human rights, freedom of religion, freedom of expression. That's the incremental step. And this is inflammatory. I'll end on this inflammatory note. I have recently been reading a lot that Viktor Orban has played into this. Vladimir Putin is using it a lot. And now it's part of the playbook of the right-wingers on planet Earth to actually cite the United States as kind of the next big evil because of wokeism, because of political correctness and wokeism and, say, equal rights for gay and transgender. The stuff that we in America, again, perhaps take for granted. You know, there's cultural wars about it in America, about, oh, transgender bathrooms or wokeness and what's the big thing that people are screaming about now? What is it about teaching Black history? Somebody help me out here. The teaching of no, but not, it's not teaching Black history, but the teaching that America. Somebody help me out. It's all the rage. School boards are all critical race theory. The critical race theory stuff that we. Thank you. It came to me right before you got on the screen there, Mexican Goose. Those things, wokeism, political correctness, transgender rights, critical race theory, these are things that, you know, we hear about all the time because it's part of the cultural wars in the United States, and it's part of the thing that polarizes, say, the Republicans from the Democrats. I had no idea that this is being used as fodder, though, by Vladimir Putin specifically. Vladimir Putin and Orban and other folks in that category are starting to say, this is why liberal democracy is not working. Look how far left the United States is going. Look how polarized they are. Look at all that stuff. Did anybody see the story where Vladimir Putin came out and said, this is just last week, said, that lady who wrote Harry Potter, she agrees with me probably because they cancel cultured her because of something she said about trans something. Sorry, I don't know all these things. I don't pay attention to a lot of cultural stuff. And who is the Harry Potter lady? J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling immediately came out on Twitter. It's like, no, don't use my name, dude. Don't use my name to try to defend your invasion of Ukraine based on that you're, you know, stepping up and defending conservative values. But my friends, that's exactly what's going on. The ultra-conservative or extreme right-wing in countries like Russia, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping plays into this. Viktor Orban, Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, probably a handful of other leaders really use that and say, this is everything that's going wrong in America is all this stuff. And that's why we're going to defend conservative values and not do what the United States is doing. And that may be starting to play out. Again, the important part of this is things like that may be starting to be playing out in other democratic states like France. So this is why I think this was an important thing to talk about for, I made it an hour and a half anyway. I really thought I was only going to do 30 minutes tonight. All I had was a handful of stories. But that is what is happening, and now you know. So Vladimir Putin very closely follows the culture wars in America and is using those hot-button issues in America to defend conservative religious values of Russia as well as his invasion of Ukraine on the same grounds that we are religious and righteous and conservative, and we're standing up against the West and all their belligerence and debauchery of all this left-wing stuff. That is definitely happening all over the place, too. And again, a bunch of Americans agree with him. That's part of the reason. I can't believe it. I just came full circle. I just came full circle in my own brain. You have witnessed something that used to happen all the time to me when I lectured live. I would start with a question that I didn't have an answer to, and I came across the answer 90 minutes later. The reason why you have 30 or 35% of Americans who really like Vladimir Putin is because he is saying, almost as propaganda, maybe he believes it, that I, in Russia, am standing up for conservative values in the United States. Drop mic. That's why you have a loyal Vladimir Putin following in the United States. He's saying the things they want to hear, and he's doing it quite intentionally. Damn, I can't believe it. Thank you, my friends, for hanging out with me until I figured that out on my own. Now I understand what's going on in America better, and I understand what's going on globally better as well, and I hope you do too. First time chatter from Just a Friendly Potato. It says P. It says, whoops, sorry, I love this topic. First time chatter from Kara 11 says, Rainy Rodriguez is a god. Don't even know who that is, but thank you, Kara. And Angus says, they say follow the Biden money trail too. Yeah, they've really been trying to make hay out of the Biden thing. Okay. Well, if there's any other questions, comments, anybody have anything else I need to consider? I thank you all for tuning in. If you're in class, I'm sorry, what? I should
read the comment. Sorry.
Oh, next stream. Sorry, I'm like, what comment? There's 1,000 comments. Next stream, we'll do next Monday night. We're in town. We're not going anywhere, are we, Katie? I believe we're in town next Monday night. So, yeah, next stream, Mexican Goose, what would you like to talk about? I know my awesome friend and the best haircutter in town, Patty, wants me to talk about the U.S. housing market, which is an intriguing topic, and I know a little bit about it. We were chatting about it. It's intriguing. Maybe I'll do the U.S. housing market. But if you have international topics that you would like to discover more about, or for me to chat more about, teach you some more stuff about, yeah, just hit me up on email or right here on this channel, and I'll do my best to get to that next topic. Next Monday night, same Plaid time, same Plaid channel, here on Plaid Twitch TV. First time chatter from C-Dubbed says, I'm currently trying to buy a house. R.I.P. I'm Wilbur. Have a great glass of wine. I'm Wilbur. Hope you find that house, C-Dubbed. I'm looking too. Chasen says, nice stream. Thank you. R cover C with the Velociraptor. That's always a thumbs up. Siraxi says, thank you. Mexican Goose says, thank you. Vikram says, yes, please. Housing market. Okay. I rarely do domestic politics, although we talked about some tonight. But yeah, I'll try to do some housing market assessment and see what's going on. And we'll talk about that next week. Is that cool with everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please like this and follow me and subscribe and pass the word along. And email me anytime you want about any questions or things you want to talk about, because my email's been the same for 25 years. JOBOYER@vt.edu. That's right, home of the Fighting Hokies here in Blacksburg, Virginia, home of Virginia Tech. Love you guys. Have a great night, and we'll see you on next Plaid time here on Twitch TV. Party on.